Welcome to Reddit Aliens. What was your I need to get the F out of here moment? Please remember to like, share, and subscribe. Worked at a hospital about 10 years ago. It was in a bad neighborhood in the Bronx, at least 1 or 2 gunshot victims in our ER daily. I was going out for lunch to a deli across the street. Waiting for the light, I saw a group of people all shouting. Then I saw another group shouting back at them. I stopped, backed up, then heard gunshots. I dropped behind the nearest car, peeked through the window to see which way they were going, then ran down the subway stairs and through the station to the other side. It was below ground on the other side, so safer. Went in through the rear exit, ate the crappy cafeteria food with no complaints, put my resume out there, took an offer at another hospital in a better neighborhood about a month later. My roommate took me to what I thought was just a barbecue at his friend's house. Instead of driving, I figured me, his girlfriend, and him could just carpool in his car. He drives us to a place out in the middle of nowhere. As we pull in, I see about a dozen or more motorcycles parked in along the driveway. I smell barbecue, so I'm not too concerned at this point. I'm thinking, not my usual barbecue, but I'm always willing to meet people outside of my social group. Anyway, so we walk around to the backyard, and about a baker's dozen of mean-looking guys and gals are sitting around a fire pit drinking liquor and eating. I couldn't help but notice the 1% patches on their leather vests, with another patch that recognized as a prominent biker gang in the area. Okay, so now I'm starting to panic a little. Fast forward a little bit, and some racial slurs started to get thrown around the fire pit with some more vulgarity attached. I've never felt more uncomfortable in a situation. I pull my roommate off to the side and ask him if he could take me home, but he replied, "We just got here, man, we can't leave." So I called an Uber, and thank Christ it was a serviceable area. I got the F out of there. I was working on a bear research project and encountered a black bear with her cub while out in the forest. She was not one of my research animals, though I had seen her before. She showed a little too much interest in me, following me at a distance but getting closer. I was about 200 meters from my vehicle at least, so I just aborted my field plans and started walking back to my car, keeping an eye on her and my hand on my bear spray. I made it to the car just fine, but that is probably the only bear encounter I've had that had the hairs on the back of my neck standing up, and I've had a lot of bear encounters. Having read these stories for a little while now, I can say when I read something that starts with, "I was doing a bear research project," it's probably not going to end well. Glad you're okay. I was already planning my exit. My ex-husband forced me to go upstairs in our home. He held me down, even though I tried to excuse myself. He did awful sexual things to me that have never been my cup of tea. I just shut down and silently cried. We had a small child in the house that I didn't want to be scared. It was horrible. I couldn't have been less turned on in my whole life. He finally stopped and then got mad because I had zero enjoyment. Get me out of this nightmare cycle. I was permanently gone in the next 2 weeks. I was at a KFC 2 days ago. A clearly unwell man was sitting across the restaurant from me as I was trying to eat, mumbling to himself. Eventually, he looked right at me and said, "You have to die sometime. Why not today?" That's all I needed to hear. I took my last bite, got up, threw my food away, and left. Shouldn't just take it with you. Was drinking with a bunch of friends and ended up leaving with a guy's friend to go smoke some weed at his buddy's house. All the alcohol I had been drinking didn't really hit me until we arrived, by which point I was extremely drunk, but proceeded to smoke with the guys as well. My friend's buddy was asking me a bunch of personal questions, during which it got brought up that my father works in law enforcement. The guy proceeds to make a comment about how if he ever knew someone in law enforcement, he would F their daughter as a power move. After several more weird sexually suggestive comments by both my supposed friend and his buddy, I start internally freaking out, knowing that I don't want to have sex and am too inebriated to consent or to put up much of a fight if they started to try to make a move. I'm 99% certain the only reason I made it out of there okay was because my friend's buddy matched with a longtime crush on Tinder, so he kicked us out so she could come over. On the walk home, my friend kept trying to get us to go back to my dorm room, where we would be alone. I kept insisting we had to go back to our friends because I knew he wouldn't try to pull anything if all our other friends were around. It was maybe 8 blocks to a friend's house, but I was so intoxicated at this point that I would think I was walking straight, only to realize that at some point my friend had led me to the other side of the street or off onto the side streets to try to get back to my dorm. Every time I'd realize this, I'd wander back the direction toward our friend's house, but this probably happened 3 to 4 times before he gave up, and we just walked straight to a friend's house. Can't even begin to describe the immense feeling of relief when I stepped through that door. Obviously, men should not be predatory creeps in the first place, but I definitely have been much more cautious in my alcohol and weed consumption since that night. I was about 12 at the time. I lived with my mom and her husband. It was my 6th grade graduation, and I told my mom that her husband had been sexually assaulting me, and she said I was lying. That's when I knew I had to get the F out of there. I packed my bags that night, bawling my eyes out, and I left that night. Walked right past her, and she didn't say a word. I never went back or talked to my mother again. My aunt got custody of me and raised me to be who I am today. I wouldn't be where I am without her. I love you, Stephanie. You're the best. My buddy and I in his high school took mescaline, and I went back to his house. As we started peeking, we were smoking cigarettes in his room with the window open. Being that it was February, I put my hood up while we were smoking. Next thing you know, my buddy is mad dogging me and asking me really strange questions like, "Are you here for her? Is this how it's going to end?" He then walks to the bathroom and takes a piss and starts hysterically laughing really loud. It's midnight, so his dad wakes up and finds him laughing his ass off with his pants around his ankles. Dad looks at me and says, "What are you two on?" I walked downstairs to find a way out, but all the doors were locked and I was tripping balls, panicking and couldn't open any doors. Went back up to see what was going on because I heard a commotion. My buddy, pants around his ankles, is hanging off a railing on a staircase 2 feet from the ground yelling, "Dad, please don't let me fall. Please don't let me die." I finally remembered the garage was open, so I ran out. I walked home 5 miles, losing my shit in 20-degree weather in the not well-lit suburbs. I thought a horse was following me until I realized I could hear the echo of my footsteps. Got home around 2 and tried to thaw out in the shower and regain my sanity. Later on, my buddy told me what set him off. His mom was dying of cancer, and when I put my hood up, he thought I was the Grim Reaper there to take his mom. He ended up being fine, and I'm not sure how he explained his actions to his dad, but I will never forget that night. Take it from someone who might know something about this. If you're on a hallucinogenic, don't walk home at 2 a.m. I promise, nothing good will come of it. From a friend. Worked in a DOT job that involved eminent domain. Being preliminary studies, the land was not yet purchased by the state. I was having to show up and work in strangers' yards where many times the state and company had both somehow forgotten to provide any notification of workers coming through. We were covered under survey law. When I tried to get any help fixing this, I kept getting blown off and my concerns not taken seriously. Everyone above me just wanted the job done, and I actually heard the words, "I wouldn't mind people building a road through my property if it would help improve the flow of traffic." Boss freaked out one day and grabbed me by my arm and pulled me into her because she was going to talk sternly to me, I guess. I walked right out of that job. The only time you ever need to make physical contact with someone is when you're shaking their hand. Edit. With the exception of preventing injury or life-saving techniques, in the workplace though, grabbing someone out of anger is unacceptable. In college, I got a fast food job. The first days I was working, management kept sending me home early to save on labor. Whatever, I didn't care. But for some reason, different managers kept coming up to me and saying, "Don't get used to this," in an accusatory tone throughout every shift. Every few hours like clockwork, completely unprompted. Like I didn't even complain. "I don't even know you yet." The tone felt a little bully-esque. It was very strange. Then the owner completely ignored all of my class days and times we had gone over together, scheduled me to miss the entire first 2.5 weeks of my college classes, refused to change it, and blamed me for his error. It set a tone for the experience. I didn't return. Lasted 4 days. There was that one day that there had been a shooting spree at one of our local shopping malls. That evening, I went to get some groceries in a different mall. Just when I had paid and put the stuff in my bag, a policeman entered and said, "Everyone stay calm. There has been a bomb threat." Since I was so close to the exit, I just went to my bike as fast as I could and cycled home in a very long way around that mall. Turned out it was a false alarm. The shooter had left a letter behind with fake threats. I get why they took it seriously. I barely understood what was happening back then. I was just like, yeah, I'm leaving right now. Went to Shanghai for a summer about 10 years ago to help a family friend sell his company, but my dad, who was my family friend's good friend in college, showed up the last week or so I was in country as a surprise. Didn't work that last week and we got to do a lot of cool things together. Part of that involved taking trips to Beijing, and then the plans were to go to Xi'an for a day as well. Anyway, we go from Shanghai to Beijing for a couple of days, all in all a great time, and we head to the airport to fly to Xi'an. Long story short, really bad weather, torrential downpour of rain and thunder, all flights delayed or cancelled. We were only going to be in Xi'an less than 24 hours, so it made no sense to try going the next day. We had to fly back to the States a day or two later, so we said F it, let's book flights back to Shanghai, which we got first thing the next morning. But we've got nowhere to stay. My dad says it's just best to stay at the airport for the night so we don't risk missing the flight. I want to find a hotel. My dad eventually gives in. I think the ticket counter agent hears us talking about it, so he flags down some guy standing next to the doors to curbside, tells us he can take us to a hotel. Us being the naive American tourists that we are, we assumed he works for the airline or one of the global hotel chains nearby. He's, of course, really nice, picks up our bags for us, and loads us into his very dirty, rundown van. That was probably the first red flag, but whatever. Red flag number 2. The hotel he's taking us to is not a Hilton, Marriott, or anywhere reputable. In fact, it's an off-effing dirt road behind one of the runways, and the hotel is easily 100 yards off the road. Red flag number 3. We get inside and sure enough, only the Imperial Suite is left available. By this point, my dad and I know we've been taken for a ride. Red flag number 4. I don't speak Mandarin, but I didn't need to know that 3 to 4 women hanging out in the lobby were not guests. They were effing hookers. Didn't help that once we got up to our room, there was a used condom left on the bed. The bedroom had a neon dragon light over the bed and an effing strobe light disco ball hanging over the ceiling. We got taken to stay at a whorehouse. There's also 3 to 4 guys hanging out right outside our room on the fire escape playing some dice game. Red flag number 5. Let's not forget about our lovely driver. Takes our bags up to our room, and we figure, well, at least this guy's nice. We decide to tip him 20 RMB, and he says, no, 2. We think, wow, you only want 2 RMB? His smile goes away. He looks us square in the eye and says in his clearest voice all night, no, 200. We're in no position to argue. We just pay the guy so he leaves. We know we've been fleeced, but we figure, F it, we're here. Just make the most of it. I go down to the bar downstairs and buy us 3 to 4 beers each, some chips, and bring them back up to the room. Watch TV, some random dating show, and my dad and I make a fun drinking game out of trying to guess what they're saying. Eventually decide it's time to sleep. We sleep in all of our clothes and keep the luggage in the bedroom. Eventually, we can tell the flights have resumed because our hotel is right over the effing flight path. Around 1 to 2 a.m., my dad wakes up and has the epiphany of, we need to get the F out of here or we may never get back to the airport. In my sheer stupidity, I tell him I want to keep sleeping. He says fine, he's going downstairs to check out and that I need to be ready in 15 minutes. He takes the key card with him, and unfortunately, it's a room where you need the key card in a slot in order to keep the lights on. Without it, the room is dark. About 30 minutes go by, and he hasn't come back. By this point, I'm wide awake, and I'm terrified the locals think the Americans have gotten wise to their game, and my dad is getting the shit kicked out of him by 3 to 4 guys behind the hotel. I legitimately think my dad could be dead or badly injured. At this point, I grab both our bags and decide I'm heading downstairs. Meanwhile, my dad is fine the whole time. He's just waiting to check out. But the gentleman in front of him, who apparently also got taken for the same ride we did, is just absolutely chewing the front desk out over something. You could hear the screams from 2 floors up. I'm running down the stairs though, praying I see him in the lobby, and I make it just in time to see that he's checked out and a van miraculously is waiting outside. It's just dropped off another batch of tourist suckers. He looks me dead in the eyes and says, "You got our wallets?" "Yes, Dad." "You got our passports?" "Yes, Dad." "You got our tickets?" "Yes, Dad." "If you left anything else behind, F it. It can be replaced. Let's get the F out of here." Got in the van. Thank God it took us back to the airport, and we made it back. It's a really funny story now that we'd love to reminisce on and share with others, but holy shit, was it scary at the time. There was a 2 to 3 minute period where I thought my dad was dead and I was never going to make it home. Was never so happy to sleep in an airport chair. I got invited to a three-way by 2 attractive women I knew when I was in my mid-20s. I thought, cool, jackpot. I meet them at a hotel and we have fun for a couple hours before there's a knock on the door. Suddenly, another guy walks in. The 2 women get embarrassed, apologize, and tell me they didn't think I'd be there that long, so they invited another guy. I think, okay, this is a little weird, but what the hell? Another 2 hours go by, and there's another knock on the door. 2 more guys walk in. It turns out they had lined up a whole string of men to show up throughout the night, and didn't think any of us would find out. I noped out of there at that point. At what point? So you did what adults do, and you finished or something, and then another guy came and you stayed, and then another 2 guys came and then you left? Sounds good. Normal Thursday night over there, eh? In July 2021, I went to visit my friends for a few days in a city a few hours from home. I had a fantastic time, and when I got into the taxi that would take me to the station on the final day, I felt sad that it was over, but happy to have met up with 3 friends that I'd not seen in 5 years. The taxi driver was friendly enough, if rather quiet. I told him that I needed to be dropped off at the assistant's call point in the station car park. I'm blind, so whenever I travel by train, I book assistance. He said that wouldn't be a problem, and we spent the rest of the journey chatting about my week away. When he pulled up at the station, things still felt fine. He got my suitcase out of the boot and handed it to me. I unfolded my cane, and he told me to wait by the car and he'd get some help. He came back and started pulling me through the car park, telling me he'd found someone. I'd never been like to be manhandled, but he was polite enough, and so I let this go. In the next second, he'd passed me over to a woman and was gone. She asked me where I needed to be, and I told her my train time and that I'd booked assistance. I started to suspect the taxi driver had handed me over to a random member of the public, which wasn't fantastic, but I still felt fairly calm. We were in a public area, and many people I meet when out and about are happy to help. We started to move, and she asked me if I was on my way home. I said yes, and that I'd been visiting some friends for the week. She told me that I was very lucky, and that she'd been homeless for a year. I felt sorry to start to creep in, but wasn't going to allow any preconceived ideas or concerns to become a problem. I face prejudice and discrimination from random strangers on a fairly regular basis, and know just how shitty it feels. And so far this woman seemed perfectly pleasant. I told her I was very sorry that she was in such a horrid situation and that I appreciated how lucky I was. Things seemed to be going okay, and we were now moving into the station concourse. I'm very hungry. Do you have any money on you? She asked. I felt my heart sink because I didn't have any cash on me, but I truly wanted to help her. However, on top of everything else, I'd yet to find my assistants, and my train was due to leave in 5 minutes. I told her that I didn't have any change, but that I would be happy to purchase something from the cafe we were passing for her. I just need money, she muttered, followed by, I'm helping you, aren't I? I didn't have to agree. I've got bigger things to worry about. My instincts were now on high alert, and everything in me was telling me that I needed to get away and board my train. I can't remember the last time I felt so certain that something was going to go terribly wrong, but any time I've felt this way in the past, it's been for a good reason. Fortunately, a station employee came across us, saw me with my cane, and the woman telling me that giving her money was the least I could do, and took charge of the situation. I was on my train within a minute, and I was very grateful to the woman who had seen what was happening and helped me out. I honestly don't know how things would have progressed otherwise, but I have a feeling I wouldn't want to find out.